So I have a question. I like to start my sermons with a question often. What is the difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking?
Building versus sustaining.
Building versus sustaining. Interesting. Laura?
I feel, just to me personally, like peacekeeping, I associate that with doing what you got to do to stop the active hostility right now, as opposed to
Yeah, doing what you got to do to peacekeeping, doing what you got to do to stop the active hostility right here in this moment, just go along to get along. And then peacemaking being something active that we're doing to actively better the things. Yeah.
Peacekeeping doesn't actually challenge injustice.
Peacekeeping doesn't challenge injustice. Correct. Cayenne?
I think they'd be one and the same.
You think they're one and the same? They can be? Say more.
Well, I mean, if I'm keeping the peace, I'm simultaneously making peace.
If you're keeping the peace, then you're making the peace.
Yes, if there's, keeping the peace can be seen as preventing a disruption,
Preventing a disruption.
and in that work, I'm also making peace, looking at the different sides of the disruption.
Looking at the different sides of it. Okay, all right.
So I would say peacekeeping is trying to change people's minds.
Peacekeeping is trying to change their minds. Peacemaking is trying to change their hearts. Ooh, I like that. So, did anyone have, growing up, the nice tablecloth that only came out Christmas, Easter, and when the really special guests were coming over? Thanksgiving, yes, Thanksgiving, exactly, yes, yeah, right? Mine growing up was this beautiful lacy tablecloth, and it was kind of it was in the special place in the buffet cabinet, and you didn't mess with it, you didn't touch it. It was white, and you couldn't touch it. Unless it was one of those special holidays, and then it was laundered, and then it would be put right back, because it had to be hand laundered in the sink, and then put right back where it was. But we also had one that was sort of tattered, that was very similar to the very fancy one, but where it had been sitting on the corners of the tables, as often does, it poked through the lace, it got worn out, and so right on the corners there were these big rips right on the end. And that one was okay to use whenever, because it had already been ripped. Because it was just family, right? Yeah. If it was just the five of us, Mom didn't care, right? Grandma wasn't coming over. We didn't have nobody to please, right? And so it was okay that where it got worn on the edges, we didn't have to fix it. It was fine. But what happened was, the more we used it, what happened? The bigger the rips got, right? And so this one, two sisters alike in dignity. They were this almost a very similar lace tablecloth. One got worse and worse and worse, and the only reason the other one didn't was because it was basically vacuum sealed and put away, right? If you don't touch it, nothing changes, right? And it will still be nice. Right? We tried to avoid any damage, but then the other side of it was that the other one just kept getting damaged until it was more tear than lace. And I think a lot about how similar that is to peacekeeping and peacemaking. Peacekeeping, some of our definition of it was you go along to get along, right? It often means that we aren't saying what's actually true, and we are displacing all of the discomfort into our own bodies. We're locking our vulnerability up so that we can just put our head down and get through, again, the same Thanksgiving dinner. Am I right? Like we keep everything looking like it is pristine, but really we're just locked up in the buffet cabinet, not in real use or real relationship. But then there's the other side of it, right? Where everything gets a whole lot of use, and then it gets so, without tending or mending, it gets so worn out that we aren't able to salvage it, right? That it's more tear than lace, that it's worn around the edges. And then the only thing left after we just can't pretend that this relationship, this tablecloth, is doing any good, we just throw it out. Because we haven't tended it or mended it when it was needed. We kept using it, pretending that everything was okay, but maybe we noticed the fraying around the edges, but didn't move to address it, to add health to that relationship. And now all that's left is to put it in the trash can and forget it ever happened, or maybe mourn its loss. The third way of Jesus offers us something else. That ability to move, to act, to be in better relationship. One of the tenets of white supremacy culture that we've been working through this Lent is fear of open conflict. So if our feelings are vacuum sealed and stuffed in the back of the buffet cabinet, no one has to know that we got upset, but the fraying around the edges on the corners is still happening. We're just ignoring it until it rips and we can't anymore, and then we throw that relationship away. One of them as well is the right to feel comfortable. Right? That if we have the hard conversation, that will make us uncomfortable, and we won't be able to handle the discomfort of trying something that isn't those two bad options. Right? But as we've been exploring, there are antidotes to this white supremacy culture. The fear of open conflict, the best thing we can do is face our fear and say, hey, actually, our relationship is frayed. Can we take steps to fix it? The answer to busting out of our extremely comfortable bubble, white folks, is to place ourselves in situations that make us feel uncomfortable because maybe we don't have all the answers. Maybe our tools aren't working anymore. Maybe we actually have something to learn and we have to be the students for once. Right? But these are the ways that we get to live into what it means to be the kingdom of God. This is what it means when the Beatitudes says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." We've been studying a lot around there not being just one right way to go about things, that there can be a both-and way of approaching, that we are able to learn through watching other people's approach. And now, we get the chance to mend. So I have a tablecloth here that my mother would be horrified to see. There's giant rips in it. They maybe are cuts, yes. How many of us, if faced with a tablecloth like this, would just throw it away? Most of us, yeah.
I would turn it into rags.
Turn it into rags, right? Its service as a tablecloth has ended, right? But maybe it'll have a new life as a window rag, right? Yeah, repurpose, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle, right?
I would take it to school and use it as a paint cloth if we were doing any kind of art project.
Yeah, take it to school and use it as a paint cloth, right? How many of you are familiar with the practice of visible mending? One person, two people, okay. I wore the sweater that I have visibly mended today on purpose. It's a dandelion. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite sweaters. And in the fall, I pulled it out, and I was like, why is my elbow so cold? There was a hole about the size of the palm of my hand, which I didn't know an elbow could do. And I was like, my sweater is unusable, at least like this, right? Could I have chopped it up and used it for rags? Totally. Could I have done some kind of patch, cut it up for patching for other things? Yeah, for sure. But I like this garment as it is. I like this tablecloth as it is. And here is another way of being in relationship with it. Oftentimes when we mend something, it's what? Hidden. Right. So sometimes when we have a conflict, we might get it settled, but then we never tell the story of that conflict again, right? We get over it, right? And yet, conflict can be generative. If we learn how to be in conflict with each other and really make peace with each other through it, it can actually be a really life-giving story to tell. I love my dandelion. I think it's cool. I love dandelions, right? And it has made something that was broken into a work of art. And so, I am inviting you to mend this tablecloth, not to throw it away, not even to reuse it or repurpose it, but to make it have new life. And there's all sorts of ways to do it, but I'm going to invite you to not make it invisible. Just like the stories of the painful things that we have gone through together is not something that we need to hide or be ashamed of. In fact, if we go back to the lesson on blessed are those who mourn, it is actually our pain spots that are uplifted, that we receive the kingdom of God through that. And so, I have a bunch of sewing materials. We have patches from Dana's Quilting, so if you want to patch, you can. If you're a dab hand with a needle and want to try a little bit of embroidery, we've got embroidery floss. There are marking pens, so if you don't freehand it like I did, don't look too closely at my dandelion. It's a little wonky. You try sewing inside a sleeve, see how you fare. But come together to mend this tablecloth. Over here we have scissors, needles, a handy stitch guide if you want to get real fancy with your embroidery stitches. But even just a basic stitch in a bright color will tell the story of people who cared to mend, cared to make peace. You can, yes, right? There's only going to be so much room around the table, and so all of these materials are also available to repair whatever it was that you brought. Because we don't throw each other away. We are invested in the repair it takes to be in relationship. And it is in so doing that we are called the children of God.